Well, good morning and welcome to our Monday Bible study. We are getting closer to the end of our study of David. Today we pick up in chapter 12 of 2 Samuel. And if you remember last week, our main focus was kind of, we have been reading so far in 2 Samuel as David becomes king of Israel. We see his kind of political and rise. And we get a very public persona of David, and it is very good. And then in last week, we began to look at some of the private life of David. And while his armies are out battling, he stays at home and gets in trouble. Not only does he take a woman that is not his wife, he ends up trying to cover it up because she becomes pregnant. Tries to get the husband back from war, tries to entice him to go and be with his wife so that he'll think it's his child. He's got more character than David because he refuses to do that because his men are on the battlefield. After a couple of tries, nothing happens, so David essentially says, probably I'll put that on. If you were listening to my feet for a minute, I'm sorry. But David essentially says, listen, send him to the front lines. He does. He dies. Joab sends word that he's gone. In many ways, he thinks everything's good until Nathan the prophet comes and tells him a parable. And in the parable, essentially God is saying, you're the one. And he sees what he's done. He repents. He mourns. The child that is born dies. And life goes on for David. We see that at the end of chapter 12, verse 24, David consoled his wife Bathsheba. He went to her, he lay with her, and she bore a son. She named him Solomon. And the Lord loved him and sent a message by the prophet Nathan, so he named him Jedediah because of the Lord. Then we move back to the battle where Joab has been the commander of his army, and where Uriah the Hittite died. So as David has been doing all of this, his army is still at war, and now the Amorites are essentially about to fall. Now Joab fought against Rahab of the Ammonites and took the royal city. And Joab sent messengers to David and said, I have fought against Rabbah. Moreover, I have taken the water city. Now then, gather the rest of the people together and encamp against the city and take it, or I myself will take the city, and it will be called by my name. So Joab essentially says, it's time for you to come on out to the battlefield. It's almost finished. If you want credit for it, you need to get out here, or I'm going to take credit for it. King probably should have already been out there. Joab says, you need to come on. So David gathered together all the people and went and fought against it and took it. He took the crown of Mikram from his head. The weight of it was a talent of gold, and in it was precious stone, and it was placed on David's head. So they take a crown off the statue of one of their gods and puts it on David's head. He also brought forth the spoil of the city, a very great amount. He brought out the people who were in it and sent them to work with saws and iron picks and iron axes, or sent them to brickworks. And thus he did to all the cities of the Ammonites, and David and all the people returned to Jerusalem. Now in this small little section of just kind of what happens after the battle, essentially David takes the spoils of war, and he takes the people as slaves. And we read this and we kind of look back to when Saul was doing some of this. What happened? God got angry, didn't he? But for some reason, David is able to do this and get away with it. In many ways, something is shifted because some of these things were not supposed to happen in tribal Israel. One thing you weren't supposed to do was to take slaves after battle. Part of it was, anytime you bring people into your encampments, you're going to be influenced by them. Also, you yourselves were slaves in Egypt. Are you going to be like Pharaoh? When the monarchy comes on, a shift changes in what is allowable and not allowable, for good or bad. And in a kingdom, kind of the rules have to be different and are different. Where God gives Saul a hard time for bringing spoils of war, David seems to be okay to do it. Some time passes, and David's son Absalom had a beautiful sister whose name was Tamar. So if you got for those that are in person, I've given a little sheet out, and it's got a family tree of David. And you can see David's sons there, Michal, Anaheim, Abigail. Those are the wives there. And under it are the children. Amnon's the oldest. And then you got Kileb and Absalom. And you see Absalom's sister is Tamar. And we are told after some time has passed, Absalom had a beautiful sister whose name was Tamar. Now this is one of the hardest stories in the Old Testament to read. And part of the reason it's hard to read is because unfortunately, like most things that happen in this way, the woman doesn't have much voice in not only what happens to her, but justice that's meted out. She really has no role in any decision for her life. When it's reported, oftentimes nothing's done. And a lot of history when women have reported being raped, especially by family members, a lot of times things aren't done. So it's a hard story to read. It's also a story that gives us an awareness in the complications of royal life for David, but also reminds us what Nathan has promised. If you remember, Nathan says to David after coming to him after the death of Uriah, he says, now, in verse 10 of 12, now therefore the sword shall never depart from your house, for you have despised me, says the Lord. You have taken the wife of Uriah. I will raise up trouble against you from within your own house. I will take your wives before your eyes, give them to your neighbor, and he shall lie with your wives in the sight. For you did it in secret, but I will do this thing before all of Israel, before the sun. So David is told that his house is going to go through some troubles. Because essentially, you broke somebody else's house. So some time has passed. David's son Absalom had a beautiful sister whose name was Tamar. How many of y'all don't know this story? That's probably good that you do know it. And David's son Amnon fell in love with her. So you got a half-brother and a half-sister here. Same father, different mother. And Amnon falls in love, and I don't know the Hebrew there, but I'm sure it's as close to lust as anything you can get. Amnon was tormented that he made himself ill because his sister Tamar. For she was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for Amnon to do anything to her. So imagine this scenario. You've got a household, royal household, and a half-brother, half-sister. The half-brother has lust so much. Not only shouldn't he take her, but it's his sister. And he lusts after her to the point he becomes ill, and he doesn't know what he's going to do about it. Kind of following after his daddy's footsteps. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of David's brother Shema. And Jonadab was a very crafty man. And he said to him, O son of the king, why are you so haggard morning after morning? Boy, you look rough. What's wrong with you, boy? Will you not tell me? And Amnon said to him, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. And Jonadab said to him, lie down on your bed. Pretend to be ill. And when your father comes to see you, say to him, let my sister Tamar come and give me something to eat and prepare the food in my sight so that I may see it and eat it from her hand. So Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. Now, can you imagine this? You know, this is, today we would say this would be the guy that gets on the internet and pretends to be a 12 or 13-year-old boy to scam a girl into getting along with them. I mean, he's a predator. Jonadab gives him the idea, but he goes along with it. They're both culpable in this. This is pretty bad. It's a hard story to read. He's laying a trap for Tamar. So Amnon lay down. He pretended to be ill, and the king came to see him. Now remember, this is his firstborn son. This is the one who really should be the one to be king after David. Amnon said to the king, please let my sister Tamar come and make a couple of cakes in my sight so that I may eat from her hand. Well, he's his firstborn son. He wants to, dote on him a little bit. Sure, I'll go get her. David sent home to Tamar, saying, go to your brother Amnon's house, prepare food for him. So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house where he was lying down. She took dough, kneaded it, made cakes in his sight, and baked the cakes. So far, and we'll see her speak, but so far Tamar has no control in this. She is the object of lust, and her father essentially doesn't ask her, he tells her what to do. Now, you've all been a part of family dynamics, and you've also been part of work dynamics. Most people can pick up on social cues. You probably know that when Tamar walks in the room, Amnon probably acts awkward. There should have been some red flags, I'm sure. Jonadab saw it. But David doesn't. She took the pan and set them out before him. He refused to eat. Amnon said, send out everyone from me. So everyone went out from him. He acts sick, helpless. He refuses to eat with anybody else in the room. Now that should have been a cue, but they're his servants. They got to go. Then Amnon said to Tamar, bring the food into the chamber so that I may eat from your hand. So Tamar took the cake she had made and brought them into the chamber to Amnon, her brother. But when she brought them near to eat, he took hold of her and said to her, come lie with me, my sister. And she answered, no, my brother. Do not force me. For such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do anything so vile. As for me, where could I carry my shame? As for you, you would be as one of the scoundrels in Israel. For the first time she speaks, and when she does, she speaks truth. If you do this to me, my future's gone. And if you do this, your reputation's gone. You're to be the king one day. Don't do this. It reminds me of the story of Cain and Abel when God comes to Cain and says, sin's lurking at the door. He gives him an out. If you do this, it will devour you. If you do this, there are repercussions for me and for you. Now therefore I beg you, speak to the king, for he will not withhold me from you. If you really want me, then ask the king, ask your father, ask our father. And in the ancient world, marriages were a little different than today. But don't take me as though I'm nothing. But he would not listen to her. Being stronger than she, he forced her and lay with her. He raped her. His lust, his passion for her was so strong. But as soon as the act is done, Amnon was seized with a very great loathing for her. Indeed, his loathing was greater than the lust he had felt for her. He hates her now. She's become his shame. She warned him. She pleaded. He did what he wanted. And in a moment, now he hates her. Get out, Amnon said to her. But she said to him, no, my brother, for this wrong in sending me away is greater than the other that you did to me. But he would not listen to her. He called the young man who served him and said, put this woman out of my presence and bolt the door after her. He throws her away. Not as if she is the daughter of a king, his sister. Forgive my language, but as a common whore. That's the way he treats her. Now she was wearing a long robe with sleeves, for this is how the virgin daughters of the king were clothed in earlier times. So his servant put her out and bolted the door after her, but Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the long robe that she was wearing. She put her hand on her head and went away, crying as loud as she went. Tamar is brave enough not to hide what has happened to her. She is essentially saying, I want justice. She's the woman that goes to the authorities. But when the word gets to the authorities, will she get justice? Her brother Absalom said to her, has Amnon, your brother, been with you? Now you would think that her brother would want to take care of this right away. Absalom is a complicated person in the narrative. I think he loves his sister, but he also wants to be number one. But for now, my sister, he is your brother. Do not take this to heart. What do you mean, don't take this to heart? So Tamar remained a desolate woman in her brother Absalom's house. She becomes essentially a spinster in his house. When the king, David, heard of all these things, word gets around. He became very angry. But he would not punish his son, Amnon, because he loved him, for he was his firstborn. David has done something similar. He raped Bathsheba. He took her. He tried to cover it up. His son has taken his daughter Tamar. I bet he's learned his lesson. He'll be a good boy from now on. Yeah, we've all made mistakes. We don't see that work in our world today, do we? David does not mete out the justice that he himself had been met out by God. God did not let David get away. And in many ways, David should have modeled to his own family God. But he doesn't do anything about it. Now imagine you're a family system and the father doesn't do anything to one of the sons that rapes a sister. Don't you think that's going to fester? Don't you think that's going to create animosity and anger? And eventually it's going to what? It's going to blow up. Yeah, it's going to blow up. After a full 2 years, Absalom's sheep shears at Belzazar, which is near Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. So it's the season of the year where the sheep are sheared, and it's not that they're actually doing it, but it's a time to celebrate. Kind of the end of a season. And Absalom's going to have a big party at his house. It's been 2 years since all of this has happened. David's probably gone on his way. Amnon's probably gone on his way. Nobody talks about these things in families, so it's been ignored. But Absalom's been planning something. Absalom came to the king. He said, "Your servant has sheep shearers. Will the king and the servants please go with your servant?" But the king said to Absalom, "No, my son, let us not all go, or else we will be burdensome to you." He pressed him, but he would not go, but gave him his blessings. So Absalom comes to the king and says, "I'm inviting all of our brothers, my brothers, to come to a meal. We want you to come too, Father." Now we can only imagine that every household brought their servants and their wives and their children. And if David comes, it's going to be even more. And David says, "Listen, I don't want to be a burden. You need to have a good time. I don't need to come because if I come, I got to bring all these extra people. That's more mouths for you to feed. No, you go. I'm giving you my blessing. You have this. I don't have to be there." Then Absalom said, "If you're not, then please let my brother Amnon go with us." "Well, if you can't be there, then let the next in line come." That'd be great if he was there. Kind of a good royal stamp on our party. Yeah. Then Absalom made a feast like a king's feast. Let's see. The king said to him, "Why should he go with you?" But Absalom pressed him until he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. David has a sense that maybe Amnon shouldn't go. But just like he is with his other Amnon, he just kind of goes along with it. All right, let me go. Then Absalom commanded his servants, "Watch when Amnon's heart is merry with wine. At the best part of the meal, when Amnon is carefree and happy, kill him. Strike him." And then he tells his servants, "Do not be afraid. Be courageous and valiant." So the servants of Absalom did to Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the sons rose, and each mounted his mule and fled. So imagine this meal. You got all of the sons of David there, and they're having a meal together as brothers. Their households are there. Imagine a great hall, big tables, lots of food. It's like a feast. Everybody's happy, merry. Now we know already that this family isn't a cohesive family. But in the moment, everybody seems to be getting along. And all of a sudden you look up and servants of Absalom are stabbing and striking and murdering in front of everybody Amnon, the firstborn of the king. What do? They run. Because the awareness is this might be a full purge of the house. He might want us all out of the way. One might even wonder if he wanted David there too. It's hard. It's a hard story to read. So far, we looked at David on the rise, and everything looks good, and he's successful, but it's almost like people that you see on TV that have great careers, horrible home lives. All the king's sons, they each mounted their mule and fled. While they were on the way, the report came to David. So David gets word, and we know sometimes how word gets transmitted and mixed up. There's no local news to watch. It's word of mouth. And the report comes to David that Absalom had killed all of the king's sons, and not one of them was left. Can you imagine David? He is filled with grief. He rose, tore his garments, and lay on the ground, and all his servants who were standing by tore their garments. But Jonadab, remember him, he's the one that filled Amnon's head with a good, horrible plan. The son of David's brother Shimei said, "Let not my lord suppose that they have killed all the young men, the king's sons. Amnon alone is dead." Is he guessing, or does he know? If you ever read, history, there's always people in courts that seem to know everything. Jonadab seems to be the person kind of pulling some strings around to get people to do things. He seems to know things maybe he shouldn't know, but he does. "Let not my lord suppose that they've killed all the young men. Amnon alone is dead. This has been determined by Absalom from the day Amnon raped his sister Tamar." Weren't you involved in that? Did you have... Question there. Could Absalom have been involved in getting Amnon to do a very thing that later he'll come back? We don't know. But there seems to be that Jonadab knows a lot more than anybody else in the narrative. Some questions there would have is, why are you so involved in all this? How do you know all this? Because you don't seem like a good person, so it's not like you're a prophet. Those are questions I have. We don't know all the answers, but if we were making a TV or a movie about this, this would be questions we would want to ask in the show. "Now therefore do not let my lord the king take it to heart as if all the king's sons were dead, for Amnon alone is dead." You think the king would take it to heart as his firstborn. He's the one that's supposed to take the throne. But Absalom fled, and when the young men who kept watch looked up, he saw many people coming from Hornam road by the side of the mountain. Jonadab said to the king, "See, the king's sons have come, as your servant said, so it has come about." As soon as he had finished speaking, the king's sons arrived and raised their voices and wept, and the king and all of his servants also wept very bitterly. But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, son of Amnon, king of Geshur. David mourned for his son day after day. And Absalom, having fled to Geshur, stayed there 3 years. And the heart of the king went out yearning for Absalom, for he was now consoled after the death of Amnon. So as time passes, he has grieved for his firstborn. Now he grieves for Absalom. Now Joab, remember Joab, he's the commander of the armies, perceived the king's mind was on Absalom. A king's not very good if he can't keep his concentration, is he? All he does is think about this son that's betrayed his family, that's far away. He misses him. And the commander says, sent to Tekoa and brought from there a wise woman. Here, Joab seems to be a little different than all the other stories about him. He seems to be sensitive to David's need, but he also knows he can't tell David right out what he needs to know. Similar to Nathan, you can't just go up to the king and say, "You've done wrong." You got to let them understand it for themselves. So he comes up with a plan. He sent to Tekoa and brought from there a wise woman. He said to her, "Pretend to be a mourner. Put on mourning garments and do not anoint yourself with oil, but behave like a woman who has been mourning many days for the dead. Go to the king and speak to him as follows." And Joab put the words into her mouth. So he takes this wise woman from a place that David's probably not been, brings her and asks her to pretend to be someone who is mourning the loss of her sons. In many ways, she will mirror for David his own emotions, his own story. When the woman of Tekoa came to the king, she fell on her face to the ground and did obeisance and said, "Help me, O king." And the king asked her, "What is your trouble?" And she answered, "Alas, I am a widow. My husband is dead. Your servant had 2 sons, and they fought with one another in the field. There was no one to part them, and one struck the other and killed him. Now the whole family has risen against your servant. They say, 'Give up the man who struck his brother, so that we may kill him for the life of his brother whom he murdered, even if we destroy the heir as well.' Thus they would quench my one remaining ember and leave to my husband neither name nor remnant on the face of the earth." Her predicament is her husband's dead, her 2 sons got in a fight, one killed the other. Now the family wants the one brother that's living dead, and she doesn't know what to do because if he goes, there's nobody else. The king said to the woman, "Go to your house, and I will give orders concerning you." The woman of Tekoa said to the king, "On me be the guilt, my lord the king, and on my father's house let the king and his throne be guiltless." And the king said, "If anyone says anything to you, bring him to me, and he shall never touch you again." And then he said, "Please may the king keep the Lord your God in mind, so the avenger of blood may kill no more, and my son not be destroyed." He said, "As the Lord lives, not on one hair of your son shall fall to the ground." So David looks at this woman's agony and shows pity on the remaining son that is not real, it's a story. She sucked him in. And he says, "Nobody will harm your son." The woman says, "Please let your servant speak a word to my lord the king." And he said, "Speak." And the woman said, "Why then have you planned such a thing against the people of God? For in giving the decision, the king convicts himself, inasmuch as the king does not bring his banished one home again. We must all die. We are like water spilled on the ground, which cannot be gathered up. But God will not take away a life. He will devise plans as not to keep an outcast banished forever from his presence. Now I've come to you to say this to my lord the king, because the people have made me afraid. Your servant thought, I will speak to the king, and he will be that the king will perform the request of his servant. For the king will hear and deliver his servant from the hand of the man who would cut both me and my son off from the heritage of God. Your servant thought, the word of my lord the king will set me at rest, for my lord the king is like the angel of God discerning good and evil. The Lord your God be with you." She essentially looks at him and says, if you can do this for me, how come you can't do it for yourself? And at the end of the day, because of the stress that you are put on because of Absalom, which there could be a very possible civil war if we're not careful. You made all of us in distress. You know, if the leadership is anxious, it falls what? It falls downward to the people. You ever remember as a child and your parents were anxious about stuff? They didn't have to tell you what was going on. You just knew. You knew something wasn't right. Same thing with any leadership. You've worked in businesses. You know when the boss, something's going on. You may not know what's going on, but you know somebody might be getting fired soon. I remember as a child, my dad's 20-year service at a business came to an end. And before it did, we all knew something was going on. It wasn't his fault. They were getting rid of older managers. They won't save money. He didn't have to tell us. We knew.
That was rumors. Rumors.
What?
What people were saying, rumors going around.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. But you know, I mean, it's just, you can tell. We can tell today when things aren't going well in leadership. Israel knows something's not right because David, for a couple of years now, has just been in a funk. And Joab sends the woman, and finally he hears what he needs to hear. The king answered the woman, "Do not withhold from me anything I ask you." The woman said, "Let my lord the king speak." Then the king said, "Is the hand of Joab with you in all this?" Did Joab put you up to this? The woman answered, "As surely as you live, my lord the king, one cannot turn right or left from anything that the Lord my king has said. For it was your servant Joab who commanded me. It was he who put all these words into the mouth of your servant. In order to change the course of affairs, your servant Joab did this. But my Lord has wisdom like the wisdom of the angel of God to know all things that are set on the earth." She tells David he's like an angel that knows wisdom and right and left, but let's just be honest, in the moment he don't. But he says, "Joab put you up to this?" "Yes." The king said to Joab, "Very well, I will grant this. Go bring the young man Absalom back." Joab prostrated himself with his face to the ground and did obeisance and blessed the king. And Joab said, "Today your servant knows that I have found favor in your sight. My lord the king is the king who has granted the request of his servant." Joab essentially put his neck on the line to try to convince the king that he needed to bring his son home so things could get better. But will they? So Joab went off to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. The king said, "Let him go to his own house. He is not to come in my presence." David could take the step to say, bring him home, but he couldn't take the step to walk out, hug and kiss his son, and welcome him home. Jesus tells the parable of the two sons and a father, and the prodigal son, we know, when he comes home, what does the father do? Runs and embraces him. Imagine you're Absalom, you get word that you can come home. When you get there, maybe you're ready to make amends with your father. We don't know Absalom's mind. But any possibility is cut off when David refuses to see his son. If anything, wouldn't it have been better to have been far away from your father and not see him than to be close by and not see him? David's not making the best decisions as a parent. He's not made the best decisions as a husband. No, he's not making the best decisions as a parent. He mourned for his son, and when his son shows up, he can't even see him. Now, in all Israel, there was no one to be praised so much for his beauty as Absalom. From the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, there was no blemish in him. When he cut the hair of his head, for at the end of the year he used to cut it, when it was heavy on him, he cut it. He weighed the hair of his head 2 shekels by the king's weight. And there were born to Absalom 3 sons, and 1 daughter whose name was Tamar. She was a beautiful woman. So Absalom lived 2 full years in Jerusalem without coming into the king's presence. Can you imagine? 2 years. This isn't a big city at this time. 2 years. Think about the resentment that builds up in 2 years. Think about the anger that builds up in 2 years. Absalom sent for Joab to send him to the king, but Joab would not come. He sent a second time, but Joab would not come. Then he said to his servants, "Look, Joab's field is next to mine, and he has a barley there. Go out and set it on fire." Listen, I've been trying to get Joab's attention. It's been 2 years since I seen my daddy. Send word, he doesn't send it back, we're going to get his attention. Go set his field on fire. So Absalom's servants set the field on fire, and Joab rose and went to Absalom at his house and said to him, "Why have your servants set my field on fire?" "Well, what are you doing?" "Look, I sent word to you, come here, that I may send you to the king with the question, why have I come from Geshur? I would be better for me to still be there. Now let me go into the king's presence. If there is guilt in me, let him kill me." Listen, if he wants to punish me, let him do it. I could have been somewhere else and moved on with my life. He brought me back here. He won't see me. And if he wants me dead, then let him just do it. Because Absalom's essentially trapped. He feels like a prisoner. Joab went to the king and told him, and he summoned Absalom. So he came to the king's and prostrated himself on the face of the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. After this, Absalom got himself a chariot and horses and 50 men to run ahead of him. We're going to stop there. We'll pick up there. Let's try to finish in 2 weeks. We'll do 2 more weeks of 1st and 2nd Samuel. After that, we will go out to eat, and then we'll take a break for the summer. Does that sound good? So bring some ideas next week for where we would like to go eat. Is there somewhere new we haven't tried? Is there something we've done before that we like? For those watching online, we'd love for you to join us if you can. We'll let you know more about it. Let me close this in prayer, and I'll stop our recording. Gracious God, we thank you for the day. God, the stories we read today are not easy stories. Oftentimes, we come to the stories from the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, and we're comfortable with the stories that we learned in childhood. Sometimes we stay with those stories. We know the story of David and Goliath. But oftentimes the stories that are the ones that mirror our lives even more and our world even more are the ones that are harder to read. Stories about betrayal, families hurting families. But God, we come to these stories knowing that even in the midst of all of the brokenness, you still use David. And even in our world, in our brokenness, you still use us. God, help us to hear the stories that are told. Let us hear the parable that the woman tells David and hear that parable for our own lives. Because in that parable, as in Jesus' parable of the father and the 2 sons, there's always possibility of reconciliation, of healing, of stopping violence for violence. But sometimes it reminds us that we have to forgive. We have to lay aside our pride. And we have to do hard and uncomfortable things. God, help us to hear these words and live them out and enact them in our lives. Lord, we love you. We thank you. We ask that you'll continue to guide us in our study together. Bring us back safely. We pray this in the name of Christ our Lord. Amen.